The ship was dying. Kang Tae-ho could feel it in the way the floor shook beneath his boots. He could hear it in the groaning metal and the distant screams. Fire and smoke filled the corridors of the Nelvari flagship, and somewhere in the darkness ahead, his mission waited. He was alone now. His squad was gone. Park had taken a plasma bolt to the chest 3 corridors back. Kim and Lee had been caught in an explosion near the engine room. Tae-ho had watched them die, and he had kept moving. That was what soldiers did. They kept moving until they could not move anymore. The war between humans and the Nelvari had lasted 5 years. 5 years of burning planets and floating corpses. 5 years of hatred so deep that children on both sides grew up learning to fear the other. The Nelvari called humans the Pale Demons. Humans called the Nelvari monsters. Both sides had done terrible things. Both sides had lost too much. But today, the war was ending. Human forces had finally cornered the Nelvari fleet. They had boarded the flagship and fought their way to the heart of the enemy command. Somewhere on this ship was the High Matriarch Velra, the queen who had started it all. Capture her, and the war would be over. Tae-ho checked his rifle and moved forward. His armor was cracked in 3 places. His left arm was bleeding. He did not care. He had a job to do. The matriarch's private quarters were at the end of a long hallway. The door was sealed, but the ship's power was failing. Tae-ho found a manual release and forced it open. The metal groaned and gave way. Inside, the room was surprisingly beautiful. Soft blue lights glowed from the walls. Strange plants grew in crystal containers. Paintings hung in frames, showing worlds Tae-ho had never seen. For a moment, he forgot he was on a warship. This looked like a home. Then he saw her. Velra stood in the center of the room. She was tall, taller than any human woman. Her skin was pale silver, and her eyes were large and dark, like deep pools of ink. She wore armor that was cracked and stained with blood. Her own blood, Tae-ho realized. She was wounded badly, but she stood straight and proud, refusing to fall. She looked at him with pure hatred. "Human," she said. Her voice was cold and sharp. "Have you come to kill me?" Tae-ho raised his rifle. His orders were clear. Capture the matriarch. Bring her to command. Do not let her escape. "Come with me," he said. "The war is over." Velra laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. "The war is never over. You will kill my people. You will burn our worlds. That is what humans do." "I am not here to argue," Tae-ho said. "Come with me, or I will drag you." Something moved behind Velra. Tae-ho's finger tightened on the trigger. He aimed past the matriarch and saw a child. She was small, very small. Her skin was the same silver as her mother's, but softer, almost glowing. Her large dark eyes were filled with tears. She clutched a small doll to her chest, a strange little thing made of cloth and beads. She was hiding behind a fallen table, watching Tae-ho with absolute terror. Tae-ho's heart stopped. No one had told him there would be a child. Velra stepped sideways, putting herself between Tae-ho and the little girl. The movement was instinctive, protective. For the first time, Tae-ho saw something other than hatred in the matriarch's eyes. He saw fear. Not for herself, for her daughter. "Kill me," Velra said. Her voice shook now. "Kill me if you must. But let her go. She is innocent. She knows nothing of this war. Please." The word hung in the air. Please. Tae-ho had never heard a Nelvari say please. He had been told they were proud creatures who would rather die than beg. But here was their queen, begging for her child's life. Tae-ho lowered his rifle. He did not know why he did it. His orders were clear. His training was clear. But when he looked at that little girl, he did not see an enemy. He saw a scared child who wanted her mother. He saw something that reminded him of his own sister, long ago, before she died in the first Nelvari attack on Earth. "I am not going to hurt her," Tae-ho said quietly. Velra stared at him. She did not believe him. Why would she? Humans and Nelvari had been killing each other for years. Trust was a luxury neither side could afford. The ship shook violently, an explosion somewhere close. The lights flickered and died, leaving only the dim glow of emergency power. "Loyalists," Velra whispered. Her face went pale. "My own people. They would rather destroy this ship than let me be captured." Teho understood immediately. If the Loyalists succeeded, everyone on this ship would die, including the child. "We need to move," he said. "Now." He grabbed Velra's arm, but she pulled away. "I cannot run. My leg." She gestured down. Teho saw that her right leg was badly wounded. She could barely stand, let alone run. Another explosion, closer this time. The ceiling cracked. Dust and debris rained down. Teho made a decision. He crossed the room in 3 quick steps and knelt before the little girl. She screamed and tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. He caught her gently, carefully, the way he used to catch his sister when she was small. "I am not going to hurt you," he said again. "I promise." The girl looked at him with wide, terrified eyes. She did not understand his words. She did not speak his language. But something in his voice, something in the way he held her, made her stop struggling. "Take her," Velra said. There were tears on her silver face now. "Take her and go. Save my daughter. I will slow them down." "I am taking both of you," Teho said. "There is no time." The door behind them exploded. Nelvari soldiers poured into the room, their weapons blazing. Teho dove for cover, shielding the child with his body. He fired back blindly, taking down 2 soldiers before they could advance. "Go!" Velra screamed. She had grabbed a fallen weapon and was firing at her own people. "Go now!" Teho ran. He carried the little girl in his arms and ran through the burning corridors, through the smoke and the chaos and the dying screams of a ship tearing itself apart. Behind him, he heard Velra fighting. He heard her scream. Then he heard nothing at all. He found an escape pod at the end of a maintenance tunnel. It was small and old, barely functional, but it was his only chance. He strapped the child into a seat. She was crying now, calling out words he did not understand, calling for her mother. Teho's chest ached. He wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, but he did not know if that was true. The pod launched. Through the small window, Teho watched the Nelvari flagship burn. Other human ships moved toward it. Somewhere on that dying vessel, Velra was either captured or dead. He did not know which. The little girl sobbed. She clutched her doll and cried for her mother. Teho sat beside her. He did not touch her. He did not speak. He simply sat there, a human soldier in a tiny pod, drifting through the cold darkness of space with an enemy's child. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know how to care for a Nelvari child. He did not know if anyone would come to rescue them, or if they would die alone in the void. But he knew one thing, one single, simple thing that burned in his chest like a small flame. He would not let anyone hurt this child. The war had taken everything from him. His friends, his family, his faith in anything good. But it had not taken his humanity. Not yet. The little girl looked up at him. Her dark eyes were wet with tears. She was so small, so scared. Teho reached out slowly and placed his hand over hers. She flinched but did not pull away. "I will keep you safe," he said softly. "I promise." She did not understand his words, but she held onto his hand anyway. And in the cold silence of space, as the stars watched without care, a human and an alien child drifted toward an uncertain future. Together, 3 weeks had passed since the escape pod drifted away from the burning flagship. 3 weeks of hiding, running, and surviving in the cold corners of Nelvari space. The pod's navigation system had failed on the 2nd day. Teho did not know where they were. He only knew that the stars outside the window were unfamiliar, and every passing ship could mean death for both of them. The little girl's name was Lyra. Taeho had learned this on the third day, when she finally stopped crying long enough to point at herself and say the word, Lyra. It was a soft name, a gentle name. It did not fit the daughter of a war queen. She was terrified of him at first. She would press herself into the corner of the pod, clutching her doll, watching him with wide eyes. Whenever he moved, she would flinch. Whenever he tried to offer her food, she would shake her head and refuse. Taeho understood. He was a human. In her world, humans were monsters. Her people told stories about the pale demons who came from the stars to destroy everything. She had probably grown up hearing those stories, and now she was trapped with one of those demons in a tiny metal box. He gave her space. He sat on his side of the pod and did not approach her. He ate his rations quietly and left some for her. Eventually, hunger won. She ate. She did not thank him. She did not even look at him. But she ate. On the fifth day, they landed on a trading station. Taeho had managed to get the pod's engines working just enough to reach the nearest port. It was a rough place, filled with criminals and smugglers from a dozen different species. Not the kind of place for a soldier or a child. But Taeho had no choice. He needed supplies. He needed information. And most importantly, he needed a way to communicate with Lyra. He traded his military rations for a small translation device. It was old and damaged, but it worked. When he spoke into it, his words came out in the Nelvari language. When Lyra spoke, he could finally understand her. Her first words to him were not what he expected. "Are you going to eat me?" Taeho stared at her. The translator beeped softly, confirming the words. He felt something twist in his chest. This was what her people taught their children about humans, that they were monsters who ate their enemies. "No," he said carefully. "I am not going to eat you. I am going to take you home." Lyra looked at him with suspicion. "Where is my mother?" Taeho did not know how to answer. He did not know if Velra was alive or dead. He did not want to lie to a child. But he also did not want to break her heart. "I do not know," he said honestly. "But I will find out. And I will take you back to her." Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then she looked down at her doll and said nothing more. They left the trading station that night, hiding in the cargo hold of a freighter heading deeper into Nelvari space. Taeho had paid the captain with the last of his credits. The captain did not ask questions. He did not care about a human traveling with an alien child. He only cared about money. The journey took 4 days. During that time, Taeho and Lyra slowly began to know each other. She asked him questions. Simple questions at first. What was his name? Where did he come from? Did humans really have red blood? When he confirmed that yes, humans bled red, she seemed both fascinated and disgusted. "Nelvari blood is silver," she told him, "like starlight." Taeho smiled slightly. "I saw your mother's blood. It was beautiful." Lyra looked at him strangely. "You think blood is beautiful?" "I think your mother was brave," he said. "She fought to protect you." "That is beautiful." The little girl fell silent. Taeho could see her thinking, trying to understand this strange human who did not act like the monsters from her stories. On the third day, she showed him her doll. She called it Biri. It was a simple thing, made of soft cloth and colored beads. One of its eyes was missing. Its arm was torn, but Lyra held it like it was the most precious thing in the universe. "My mother made Biri for me," she said quietly. "When I was very small, she said Biri would protect me when she could not." Taeho looked at the little doll. He thought about his own mother, long dead now, and the small toy bear she had given him when he was a boy. He had lost that bear years ago. He still missed it. "Biri is very brave," he said. Lyra smiled. It was the first time she had smiled at him. It changed her whole face, made her look like the child she really was, instead of a frightened prisoner. They reached another station on the 5th day. This one was larger, more crowded. Taeho hoped to find information about Velra here, but instead, they found trouble. Bounty hunters, The news of Lyra's disappearance had spread across the galaxy. Some Nelvari believed she had been kidnapped by humans. Some humans saw her as a valuable hostage, and opportunists on both sides saw her as a way to get rich. Taeho spotted the hunters before they spotted him. 3 of them, moving through the crowd, showing pictures of Lyra to station vendors. One of them pointed in their direction. "We need to go," Taeho said quietly. He took Lyra's hand and pulled her toward a side corridor. Now, they ran. Through narrow passages and crowded markets, past confused aliens and shouting merchants. Lyra was small and fast, but she could not keep up with Taeho's long strides. He lifted her into his arms and kept running. The hunters followed. They were faster than Taeho expected. One of them fired a warning shot that burned the wall beside his head. "Stop," one of them shouted. "We just want the girl." Taeho did not stop. He ducked into an abandoned loading bay and set Lyra down behind a pile of crates. "Stay here," he told her. "Do not move, do not make a sound." Her eyes were wide with fear. "What are you going to do?" Taeho checked his weapon. It was almost out of power. He had maybe 3 shots left. "I'm going to keep my promise," he said. The hunters entered the loading bay. They moved carefully, weapons raised, scanning the shadows. They were professionals. They knew what they were doing. But Taeho was a soldier. He had been fighting since he was 18 years old. He had survived 5 years of war against the Nelvari. 3 bounty hunters were not going to stop him. He attacked from the darkness. The first hunter went down before he even knew what hit him. Taeho took his weapon and used it on the second. The third managed to fire once, hitting Taeho in the shoulder, but Taeho did not stop. He closed the distance and put the hunter down with a single, brutal strike. Then it was over. 3 bodies on the ground. Silence in the loading bay. Taeho stood there, breathing hard, blood running down his arm. His shoulder burned with pain. But he was alive. And Lyra was safe. He turned to find her watching him from behind the crates. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide. She had seen everything. She was scared of him again. Taeho felt something cold settle in his chest. He had frightened her. She had seen the monster that humans could become. And now she would hate him, like all her people did. He stepped back, putting distance between them. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "I did not want you to see that. 18 AD. I did not want you to see that." Lyra did not respond. She just stared at him with those large, dark eyes. Taeho found a medical kit in the loading bay and treated his wound as best he could. His hands were shaking. Not from pain, from the way Lyra was looking at him. He sat down against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The fight had taken more out of him than he wanted to admit. He was tired. So tired. Minutes passed. He heard small footsteps approaching. He looked up to see Lyra standing in front of him. Biri clutched to her chest. She held out the doll toward him. Taeho blinked. "What are you doing?" "Biri wants to help you," Lyra said softly. "She says you are sad." Taeho stared at the little doll. Then he looked at Lyra's face. She was not scared anymore. She was worried. "About him. I saw you fight," she said. "You were very scary." "But—" She paused, thinking carefully about her words. "Monsters do not get scared. You were scared. I could see it. You were scared for me." Taeho could not speak. There was a lump in his throat that would not go away. Lyra pushed Biri into his hands. "Hold her. She makes the scared go away." Taeho took the little doll. It was soft and worn, smelling faintly of something sweet he could not identify. He held it gently, like it was made of glass. Lyra sat down beside him, not across from him, beside him. "I do not think you are a monster," she said quietly. "I think you are just a person. Like me." Taeho closed his eyes. He held the little doll in his bloody hands and felt, for the first time in years, that maybe he was not completely lost. A transmission came through on a stolen communicator that night. Human military channels. Taeho almost did not listen. but something made him tune in. The voice on the other end spoke of the High Matriarch Velra. She was alive. Captured. Being held in a human detention facility on the moon of Helos 4. Lyra was asleep beside him, curled up with her head on his arm. She looked peaceful. Innocent. She did not know that her mother was alive. She did not know that her mother was a prisoner. Taeho looked down at the sleeping child. Then he looked out the window at the distant stars. He knew what he had to do. He was going to reunite this little girl with her mother. No matter what it cost him. The moon of Helos 4 was a cold, gray world. It had no beauty, no life, no warmth. It was the perfect place for a prison. The unified human detention complex sat in the middle of a frozen plain, surrounded by walls of steel and fields of energy that could kill anything that tried to cross them. Inside those walls, the enemies of humanity waited for judgment. Criminals, terrorists, war leaders, and one mother who had lost everything. Velra sat in her cell and stared at the empty wall. She had been here for weeks now. Or was it months? She had lost track of time. The days blurred together into an endless stream of gray silence. They had tried to interrogate her at first. They had asked about Nelvari military secrets, about hidden bases and secret weapons. She had told them nothing, not because she was strong, but because she no longer cared. Her daughter was dead. Her empire was falling. What did secrets matter anymore? The humans told her that Lyra had been killed in the explosion on the flagship. They showed her reports, images of the destroyed escape pod. They said they were sorry for her loss. Their words meant nothing, their apologies were empty. They had taken everything from her. She did not eat anymore. She barely slept. She simply sat and stared at the wall, waiting for death to come and free her from this endless pain. On the other side of the galaxy, a small cargo ship approached Helos 4. On board were two passengers who had no business being there. Taeho looked out the window at the frozen moon below. His stomach was tight with nerves. What he was about to do was insane. It was suicide. But he had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. Lyra sat beside him, wearing a cloak that hid her silver skin. She was quiet, sensing the tension in the air. She held Biri close and watched Taeho with worried eyes. "Is my mother really down there?" she asked. Taeho nodded. "Yes, she is. Is she okay?" He did not know how to answer that question. He had heard reports that Velra had stopped cooperating with her captors, that she had stopped eating, that she was giving up on life. "She misses you," he said instead. "She thinks you are gone. We need to show her that you are not." The cargo ship landed at a small port on the edge of the detention complex's territory. Taeho had paid the captain well to ask no questions. The captain had simply nodded and wished him luck. He would need it. Taeho had one advantage. He knew the system. He had contacts who still believed in doing the right thing. One of those contacts was Commander Baek Sung, his former commanding officer. Sung was waiting for them in a small building near the port. He was an older man, his hair gray and his face lined with years of war. He had always been fair, always tried to do what was right, but right now, he looked at Taeho like he was looking at a ghost. "They told me you were dead," Sung said quietly. "Missing in action. Presumed killed on the flagship. 2021. "I survived," Taeho said simply. Sung's eyes moved to Lyra, half hidden under her cloak. His face became even more troubled. "Is that who I think it is?" "She is just a child," Taeho said. "Her mother thinks she is dead. I am going to reunite them." Sung was silent for a long moment. The weight of the request hung in the air between them. What Taeho was asking was not just difficult. It was treason. "You are asking me to commit a crime against the United Earth Command," Sung said slowly. "They will execute me. They will execute you." "I am asking you to end a war," Taeho replied. "Velra has stopped fighting. She has stopped living. If she sees her daughter again, if she knows Lyra is alive, maybe she will finally agree to peace. Real peace. not just a temporary stop to the killing. Sung looked at Lyra again. The little girl looked back at him with her large dark eyes. She did not look like a monster. She looked like a child who missed her mother. "Please," Lyra said softly. "I want to see my mother." Something shifted in Sung's face. He closed his eyes and sighed deeply. "You will be the death of me, Taeho," he said. Taeho almost smiled. Probably. The plan was simple. Sung would get them inside the detention complex through a maintenance entrance. From there, Taeho would navigate the corridors using old security maps. They would reach Velra's cell block, reunite mother and daughter, and then figure out the rest. It was a terrible plan. Taeho knew this. But it was the only plan they had. Night fell on Helos 4. The temperature dropped to deadly levels. Inside the detention complex, lights dimmed as the facility entered its sleep cycle. Guards changed shifts. Security systems ran on automatic. Taeho and Lyra moved through the shadows like ghosts. The maintenance entrance was just as Sung had described it. They slipped inside without being seen. The corridors were cold and gray, exactly like the moon outside. Taeho kept Lyra close, holding her hand tightly. She was scared. He could feel her trembling. But she did not make a sound. She was brave, this little girl. Braver than she knew. They passed sleeping guards and humming security cameras. Taeho knew the patrol patterns. He knew where to hide and when to move. 5 years of war had taught him many things. Staying alive was one of them. They reached the high-security wing where the most dangerous prisoners were kept. Velra's cell was at the end of a long corridor, behind 3 locked doors and a wall of reinforced glass. Taeho could see her through the glass. She sat on a simple bed, staring at nothing. She looked thin, weak, broken. This was not the proud matriarch he had seen on the flagship. This was a mother who had lost her reason to live. "Mother," Lyra whispered. Velra did not hear. The glass was too thick. The distance was too great. Taeho moved toward the first door. He had Sung's access codes. They should work. They had to work. He entered the first code. The door opened. He entered the second code. The door opened. He was reaching for the third door when the alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed. Sirens wailed. Somewhere in the complex, boots began pounding against metal floors. "They know we are here," Taeho said grimly. "We need to move faster." He grabbed Lyra and ran toward the final door. The code worked, but too slowly. By the time the door opened, guards were already appearing at the end of the corridor. "Stop!" one of them shouted. "Put down your weapon." Taeho did not have a weapon. He had given it up to get through security. He was unarmed, in the middle of an enemy base, with a child in his arms. But he was also a soldier. And soldiers did not give up. He ran toward the glass wall of Velra's cell. Lyra was crying now, reaching out toward her mother. Velra had finally looked up. She was staring at the glass with wide eyes, unable to believe what she was seeing. "Lyra?" Her voice was barely audible through the barrier. "Lyra? Mother!" Lyra screamed. She pressed her hands against the glass. "Mother, I am here." Velra threw herself at the glass, her hands reaching for her daughter. Tears streamed down her silver face. She was saying something, over and over, in a language Taeho did not understand. But he did not need to understand the words. He understood the feeling. A mother had found her child. Then the guards reached them. Taeho felt the first blow before he saw it coming. Someone hit him from behind, knocking him to the ground. He tried to get up, but more guards piled on top of him. They were shouting, pulling him away from Lyra. "No!" Lyra screamed. "Do not hurt him! Do not hurt him!" They pulled her away from the glass. Velra was screaming now, pounding on the barrier, trying to break through to her daughter. Someone pointed a weapon at Taeho's head. "Do not move." He looked up and saw Lyra being carried away by a female guard. The little girl was fighting, crying, reaching back toward him. She still had Beery clutched in one hand. "Taeho!" she screamed. "Taeho!" Then something hard hit his head, and the world went dark. The last thing he heard was Velra's voice, screaming through the glass. It was not a scream of anger. It was not a scream of hatred. It was a scream of hope. She had seen her daughter. She knew Lyra was alive. And somewhere in that scream, Tejo heard something new. Something that had not existed between humans and Nelvari for a very long time. Gratitude. Then the darkness took him, and he knew nothing more. When Tejo woke up, he was in a cell of his own. His hands were bound. His head ached. His body was covered in bruises, but none of that mattered. All that mattered was the sound of a little girl's voice, echoing in his memory. Tejo! Tejo! She had called his name. She had fought for him. This little alien child, daughter of his enemy, had tried to protect him. He closed his eyes and leaned back against the cold wall. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know if he would live or die. But he knew one thing: he had done the right thing. And whatever came next, he could face it. The military hospital was cold and white. Everything was clean and sharp, like a knife waiting to cut. Tejo lay in a bed with his hands bound to the rails. He was a prisoner now. A traitor. A man who had thrown away everything for an enemy's child. He had been here for 3 days. In that time, no one had told him anything. Not about Lyra. Not about Velra. Not about what would happen to him. He had plenty of time to think. Too much time. On the 4th day, a woman came to see him. She was young, with kind eyes and steady hands. She wore the uniform of a medical officer, and she moved quietly, like someone who was used to being around people in pain. "I am Yuna," she said softly. "I am your doctor." Tejo looked at her but did not speak. He had learned that speaking only made things worse. Yuna checked his wounds carefully, her touch gentle. She did not treat him like a criminal. She treated him like a patient. "The little girl has been asking about you," she said quietly. So quietly that no one else could hear. "She will not stop saying your name." Af. Tejo's heart jumped. "Lyra? She is okay? She is safe. They put her in protective custody. She is not a prisoner. But she is not free either. She is." Yuna paused, choosing her words carefully. "She is a very brave little girl." Relief washed over Tejo. Lyra was alive. She was safe. That was all that mattered. "And her mother?" he asked. Yuna's expression became complicated. "The matriarch has changed. Ever since she saw her daughter, she has been different. She is eating again, speaking again, but she will only cooperate with the peace talks under one condition." "What condition?" Yuna looked at him with something like wonder in her eyes. "She wants to see the human who saved her daughter." The peace talks had been failing for weeks. The Nelvari demanded Velra's release. The humans demanded reparations for the millions who had died in the war. Neither side was willing to give ground. Neither side was willing to trust. But now, something had shifted. The news of what Tejo had done spread through the facility like wildfire. A human soldier had risked his life to reunite an enemy child with her mother. He had not done it for politics. He had not done it for glory. He had done it simply because it was right. Some people called him a traitor. Others called him a hero. Most did not know what to call him at all. On the 6th day, a general came to see him. General Juan was a hard man, with cold eyes, and a reputation for ruthlessness. He had led the war against the Nelvari. He had ordered the bombing of civilian cities. He was not the kind of man who believed in mercy. He sat down across from Tejo and studied him like an interesting problem. "You have caused me a lot of trouble," Juan said. Tejo said nothing. "The Nelvari are using your little stunt as propaganda. They say it proves that humans can be decent, that we are not all monsters." Juan's lip curled with disgust. "It is making my job very difficult." "Your job is to kill people," Tejo said quietly. "Mine was to protect them." Juan's eyes flashed with anger. But he controlled it. He was too experienced to let his emotions show. "I am going to offer you a deal," Juan said. "Testify that the matriarch ordered the kidnapping of her own daughter. Say that the Nelvari were using the child as a weapon, trying to manipulate human soldiers into betraying their own kind. In exchange, all charges against you will be dropped. You will go free. Taeho stared at him. You want me to lie? I want you to be smart. The words hung in the air. Taeho thought about freedom. He thought about walking out of this hospital, going home, starting over. He thought about how easy it would be to say yes. Then he thought about Lyra. Her wide, dark eyes. Her small hand holding Beery. Her voice calling his name as they dragged her away. No, he said. Juan leaned forward. Think carefully, Sergeant. This is your only chance. She is a child. Taeho said. His voice was steady. Not a weapon. I will not lie about that. I will not lie about her. For a long moment, Juan just looked at him. Then he stood up, his face expressionless. You are a fool, he said. You will die for nothing. Maybe, Taeho replied. But at least I will die honest. Juan left without another word. Taeho lay back in his bed and closed his eyes. His hands were shaking. He was not as brave as he pretended to be. He was terrified, but some things were more important than fear. 2 days later, they came for him. Guards in full armor, restraints on his hands and feet. They took him through long corridors and security checkpoints, until finally they reached a door marked Interrogation Room 7. Inside, someone was waiting for him. Velra sat at a metal table, her hands folded in front of her. She looked different from the last time he had seen her. She was still thin, still pale, but there was something in her eyes that had not been there before. A spark, a fire, hope. The guards pushed Taeho into a chair across from her. Then they left, locking the door behind them. It was just the two of them now. The enemy queen and the common soldier. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just looked at each other. Two people who should have been enemies. Two people who had every reason to hate. You saved my daughter, Velra said finally. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. She was scared, Taeho replied. She was alone. That was enough. Why? The question came out like a breath, barely audible. Why would you do that? Your people killed millions of mine. My people killed millions of yours. Why would you save my child? Taeho thought about the question. He had thought about it many times over the past weeks. He had turned it over in his mind, looking for an answer that made sense. I had a sister, he said finally. She was young, innocent. She died in the first attack on Earth. I could not save her. I could not protect her. I have carried that weight for 5 years. He paused, finding the words. When I saw Lyra, I saw my sister. I saw a child who needed help. I could not let her die. I could not let her suffer. Not when I had the power to stop it. Velra was silent. Tears ran down her silver face. But she made no move to wipe them away. I was wrong about your kind, she said quietly. I thought humans were monsters. I taught my people that humans were evil, that they could not be trusted. But you. She shook her head slowly. You protected my daughter when you had every reason to hurt her. You gave up your freedom to reunite her with me. No monster would do that. She stood up slowly and walked around the table until she was standing in front of him. Then she did something that no Nelvari had ever done to a human. She bowed her head. I am sorry, she said. For everything my people have done. For every human we killed. For every world we burned. I cannot undo the past. But I can try to build a different future. Taeho did not know what to say. He had never expected this. He had never imagined that the proud matriarch of the Nelvari would apologize to him. I will agree to peace, Velra continued. Full and unconditional. I will not demand reparations. I will not demand territory. I only want 2 things. What things? Velra looked at him with eyes full of something he could not name. I want my daughter returned to me. And I want you freed. You saved her life. The least I can do is save yours. The peace agreement was signed 3 weeks later. It was the biggest diplomatic breakthrough in human history. The war that had killed millions finally ended. Ships stopped firing. Soldiers went home. For the first time in 5 years, the galaxy was quiet. Not everyone was happy. General Juan and his supporters called it a surrender. Some Nelvari hardliners called Velra a traitor. But most people, on both sides, were simply tired of fighting. They wanted peace. They wanted to go home. Lyra was returned to her mother on a cold morning in early spring. Taeho was not there to see it. He was being processed for release in another part of the facility. But later, Yuna told him what happened. She cried, Yuna said softly. Both of them cried. The little girl kept saying your name. She kept asking where you were. She wanted to say goodbye. Taeho closed his eyes. His chest ached with an emotion he could not identify. Did you tell her? He asked. Yuna shook her head. I did not know what to say. What do you tell a child about the man who saved her life? Taeho had no answer. He walked out of the detention facility that afternoon. No guards. No restraints. A free man. The sun was cold on his face, and the wind carried the smell of ice and metal. He did not look back. He did not want to see the prison walls, or the gray buildings, or the cold moon that had held him captive. He just walked, one step at a time, into an uncertain future. Behind him, somewhere in the facility, a little girl with silver skin held her mother tight and asked the same question over and over. Where is Taeho? Where is the human who saved me? And her mother, the queen who had learned to hope again, could only hold her daughter and whisper the truth. I do not know, my little star. But wherever he is, we owe him everything. 1 year had passed since the war ended. The galaxy had changed. Human and Nelvari ships now passed each other without firing. Trade routes opened between worlds that had once been enemies. Children on both sides grew up hearing different stories now. Stories about peace. Stories about hope. Kang Taeho knew none of this. He worked at a spaceport on the outskirts of Seoul, loading cargo onto freighters that traveled to distant stars. It was simple work. Quiet work. No one asked him questions. No one knew who he was. He was just another worker in worn coveralls, moving boxes from one place to another. He preferred it that way. The military had discharged him quietly. No medals, no ceremony, no official record of what he had done. Some people in high places had wanted to punish him. Others had wanted to honor him. In the end, they had chosen to simply forget him. It was easier that way. Taeho did not mind. He had never wanted glory. He had never wanted to be a hero. He had just wanted to do the right thing. Most nights, he went home to a small apartment in a building that had seen better days. He ate simple meals. He read old books. He watched the ships pass overhead and wondered where they were going. Sometimes, he dreamed of a little girl with silver skin and dark eyes. In his dreams, she was laughing. She was safe. She was happy. Those were good dreams. On a Tuesday morning in early autumn, something unusual happened at the spaceport. A Nelvari diplomatic shuttle arrived. Surrounded by human escort ships, it was the first official Nelvari visit to Earth since the peace treaty was signed. The whole city was talking about it. Taeho heard his coworkers whispering about the visit during their break. The High Matriarch herself was coming, they said. She was bringing her daughter, the young princess who had supposedly been kidnapped by humans during the war. There were going to be ceremonies and speeches, and all sorts of diplomatic events. Taeho listened to the whispers and said nothing. His heart was beating faster than normal, but his face showed nothing. He told his supervisor he was taking a break and walked to the main terminal. The crowd was thick. Hundreds of people had gathered to see the Nelvari delegation. Security guards kept them behind barriers, but everyone pushed forward, trying to get a glimpse of the alien visitors. Taeho did not push. He stood at the back of the crowd, half hidden behind a pillar. He did not want to be seen. He just wanted to see. The shuttle doors opened. Nelvari guards emerged first, their armor gleaming under the autumn sun. Then came advisors and diplomats in flowing robes, and finally, at the center of it all, came the matriarch. Velra looked different. Healthy, strong. She wore robes of deep blue that shimmered as she moved. Her silver face was calm and composed. the face of a leader who had learned to hope again. But Taeho barely noticed her. His eyes found the small figure walking beside her. Lyra. She was taller now. Her face was older, more defined, but her eyes were the same. Those large, dark eyes that had once looked at him with fear, then trust, then love. She was smiling, waving at the crowd. A happy child on an exciting adventure. Taeho's chest ached with something he could not name. He watched as the delegation moved through the terminal, surrounded by guards and officials. He watched Lyra skip ahead, then run back to hold her mother's hand. He watched her laugh at something one of the guards said. She looked happy. She looked safe. She looked like a normal little girl. That was all he had ever wanted for her. The delegation was almost past him now. Lyra was close, only a few meters away. Taeho could have called out. He could have stepped forward. He could have reminded her of who he was, but he did not move, because he knew the truth. Yuna had told him, months ago. She had found out from the diplomatic channels, from the reports that crossed her desk. She had been the one to explain. The Nelvari had a tradition called the Veil. When a child experienced something too painful to bear, the elders would seal those memories away. It was meant to protect them, to let them grow up without carrying the weight of trauma. Lyra had undergone the Veil. All her memories of the escape, the fear, the running, the fighting, had been locked away in a part of her mind she could no longer reach. She did not remember the burning ship. She did not remember the bounty hunters. She did not remember the desperate journey through enemy stars. She did not remember Taeho. And Velra had undergone something similar. Not the full veil, but a partial cleansing. Her memories of captivity, of the interrogation, of the endless gray days in her cell, had been softened and blurred. She remembered that peace had been achieved. She remembered that her daughter had been saved. But she did not remember the face of the man who had made it possible. Taeho understood why they had done it. He did not blame them. Lyra was a child. She deserved to grow up without nightmares. She deserved to be happy, but understanding did not make it hurt any less. He watched as Lyra walked past his pillar. For a brief moment, she turned her head and looked directly at him. Their eyes met. Something flickered in her expression. A tiny frown, like she was trying to remember something just out of reach. She tilted her head, studying his face, then the moment passed. She smiled politely, the way one smiles at a stranger, and walked on. Taeho watched her go. He watched until the delegation disappeared through the far doors. He watched until the crowd began to break apart and drift away. Then he turned and walked back to work. That night, Yuna found him at a quiet bar near the spaceport. She had transferred to Seoul a few months ago, taking a job at a civilian hospital. They had become something like friends. She was one of the few people who knew his story. She sat down beside him and ordered a drink. "I heard they arrived today," she said. "Did you see them?" Taeho nodded slowly. "I saw them. How was it?" He thought about the question for a long moment. How was it to see the child you had saved and know that she did not remember you? How was it to stand invisible in a crowd, watching everything you sacrificed walk away without a second glance? "She looked happy," he said finally. "That is all that matters." Yuna studied him with sad eyes. "Does it not hurt that she does not remember?" Taeho took a slow sip of his drink. The alcohol burned his throat, but it did not touch the ache in his chest. "It hurts," he admitted. "But I did not save her, so she would remember me. I saved her because she was scared and alone. I saved her because she needed help." He paused, finding the right words. "She is happy now. She is safe. That is enough." Yuna did not respond right away. She just sat with him in silence. Two people sharing a moment of quiet understanding. "You are a good man, Kang Taeho," she said finally. "I hope you know that." He smiled slightly, but it did not reach his eyes. "I just did what anyone would have done." "No," Yuna said firmly. "You did what no one else would have done, and the galaxy is better for it." Taeho returned to his apartment late that night. The streets were quiet. The stars were bright. Somewhere up there, on a shuttle returning to Nelvari space, a little girl was sleeping peacefully, untroubled by memories of war. He unlocked his door and stepped inside. The apartment was dark and simple. A bed. A table. A few old books. Nothing special. But on a shelf by the window sat a single item that did not belong. Beery, the little doll that Lyra had pressed into his hands on the day they were separated. She had insisted he keep it, so he would not be lonely. The guards had tried to take it from him when they arrested him. He had fought them for it. He had refused to let it go. In the end, they had let him keep it. What harm could a child's toy do? Tejo picked up the doll and held it gently. It was worn and old. One of its eyes was still missing. Its arm was still torn. But it was soft and warm, and it smelled faintly of something sweet. He sat down by the window and looked out at the stars. The galaxy had moved on. The war was over. The matriarch and her daughter were rebuilding their empire. Humans and Nelvari were learning to live together in peace. And the soldier who had made it all possible sat alone in a small apartment, holding a child's toy, content to be forgotten. He did not need medals. He did not need recognition. He did not need the galaxy to remember his name. He just needed to know that somewhere out there, a little girl was happy. That was enough. Tejo leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. The doll rested against his chest. The stars watched silently through the window. And in the quiet of the night, in a world that had finally found peace, a forgotten hero smiled. It was a small smile, a tired smile. But it was real, because some things were more important than being remembered. Some things were worth any price. And Kang Tejo, the man who had guarded the enemy's daughter, would pay that price again and again, without hesitation, because that was what it meant to be human.